G'day guys, boy do I have some cool stuff to show you today. We were promised a beta in April, it is now April, and lo and behold we have received a beta. As of this moment it doesn't even have a title, it is that hot off the press, but by the time you're watching this video maybe it will, who knows. As is the case with all of these betas, what you're seeing is not the finished product. It may change substantially by the time the update comes out. So keep that in mind while you watch this video. Take the information with a little pinch of salt, but I am going to show you everything that's in the beta at this point, and it's pretty freaking cool. And before we even get into the game, we have a couple of world gen settings that I need to talk about. This setting basically just changes whether these rifts will spawn after killing Celestial Champion, which is default, or whether they will always spawn in the world, meaning you don't need to kill Celestial Champion for them to spawn. And then you can adjust their frequency, which is how often they will spawn in the world. Wilson has also been given a new skill in this update. On top of the Shadow Courtier skill, he also has the Lunar Innovator. This lets you transmutate some lunar goodies, which I'll show as we get into the game. And this is the Rift. This is essentially the crux of the beta, and the kind of point where everything will spawn from. This spawns 5 or so days after Celestial Champion has been killed, or after you spawn into a new world if you have the setting enabled to always instead of default. It will just spawn randomly across the world. I've had one spawn in the swamp, I had one spawn in the Oasis Desert, and this one spawned just in the middle of a forest. I cleared a bunch of trees around it so you can see it a bit better, but it just spawned right in the middle amongst a bunch of trees, which is a little bit annoying. Hopefully they change it so that it will spawn in more particular places that you can kind of keep track of. It would suck for this to spawn just in the middle of your base. Maybe it checks for whether or not there are structures around it, I don't know. There's also this grazer dude who is just very slowly following me around. He has a cloud of some kind of gas around him which puts you to sleep. I wouldn't really recommend fighting him for this reason. You also won't be able to kill him. As you can see, I'll try to fight him now. If you do manage to take off enough health from him, he'll just form into these clumps and then gain his health back and reform, which is not really fair. He also puts you to sleep if you stay in the cloud for too long, and then takes a bite out of you, which is not much fun, which does 60 damage. The point of it is not to fight him, you kind of just lead him around while you do what you gotta do around the rift. You will need to wait a few more days for the rift to become a bit bigger if you want to actually collect the resources that it spawns. So it's been a few more days now, and you can see the rift kind of pulsed out. If they do retreat into the ground, they'll stay there as long as you don't go nearby, so I'll just leave those guys there, and we need to wait a few more days. Now you can see the lunar turf has started to grow a bit. It's also formed these crystals. If you stand on the crystals while they pulse and break, you will actually take damage. I think you take about 30 damage. You'll see in a moment. It goes white and then it breaks. So don't stand on it while it breaks, but there's also not really much reason to, so. But as we keep skipping through the days, we'll get more of these guys as well. But now it's grown enough to form these rift souls, which you'll need to mine to get the new resource. And much like the new Nightmare Pig, you will need a pickaxe if you want to mine this. And it takes quite a lot to mine. All the while these guys are chasing you. So now you can probably understand why they move so slow. The idea is to kind of lead them around while you mine the rest of this. And from this you get Pure Brilliance, which is one of the 2 new resources introduced in this beta. I will show you the other one, but we need to set up a few things before we can get it. So we'll just mine all of this while we can, before these guys catch up to me. From each of these structures you get 1 or 2 of them. So It's not too hard to get, but it is a little annoying to have to dodge these guys. And now before I let it grow any further, I'm actually going to plant a few crops around the place because this will be important for the next few steps. And I'll plant them a little bit further out too, because I think it's going to grow even bigger than it currently is. So every time it pulses, you either get more of these riftstools, you get more of these grazers, or it increases the amount of corrupted tiles that spawn, or a combination of the two. So you can keep mining these and it will keep spawning more. I think it can make a maximum of 12 at once. I didn't see any more than that. So you can get a considerable amount, you know, roughly 15 to 20 of these pure brilliance. So now it spawns these guys. And they go out, they kind of scout around looking for crops. And when they find one, they create this deadly bright shade, which is actually very deadly. So they attack kind of like the poison birch nuts. They will send these little tunneling vines after you, and they hurt. Each time the vine hits you, it will deal 75 damage if you have no armor on, or God mode off. And you need to kill this vine before you can attack the bright shade, because if you don't, this will happen. So you can hit it a little bit, but it is gonna shoot you off and knock you way back. Not only that, but that attack deals 130 damage. So it is nothing to be trifled with. Unfortunately, these vines also have damage resistance. So you can see with a dark sword, I'm only dealing 28 damage, which is down from the usual 68 damage that it would do on a regular creature. So once I've killed this, the bright shade will open up a bit and I get to target it directly. You can see I'm still only doing 28 damage. You can attack it for a time before it kind of regenerates, and then you gotta repeat the process. It might take you a few goes of killing the vine. You can see once it starts to shake, that means it's recovering, so you can retreat before it hits you with that knockback attack, because like I said, that really hurts. Like, you don't want to get hit by that, especially not with no armor on. I guess if you're wearing some really strong armor, you can probably tank it. So we'll kill that and finally destroy this. And from all of that process, you get one bright shade husk. So now that we have the bright shade husk and the pure brilliance, it is perfection. We can finally start to make some of the new stuff. It seems you only get one husk from killing these bright shades. I've killed a bunch of them and they've only dropped one for me each time. It would be nice if they had a chance to drop 2 or 3, because it is really painful to kill these things. I will show you a way to get them a little bit easier later on, but it's still going to take a lot of work no matter which way you slice it. In order to build some things with the bright shade husks and pure brilliance, you will need to build the new forge item. Not the forge, it is an actual forge called the bright smithy. For the bright smithy, you will need some moon rocks, moon shards, and 1 pure brilliance. And you need to craft it at the celestial orb or at one of the lunar crafting stations if you've got them set up on the moon. And by forging at this bright smithy, you will be able to unlock the rest of the items in this update, of which there are actually quite a few, and they look really, really cool. So first of all, we get some bright shade armor, and as you can see, you're going to have to fight quite a few of those husks. You'll need 4 alone just for this armor, and 2 more if you want to complete the set. And you probably do want to complete the set if you're going with this armor, because you do get a set bonus against shadow creatures for wearing the 2 of them put together. There's a new kind of bomb that you can craft. There's a bright shade staff, sword, pickaxe, which has 800 uses, and a shovel. So I've gone ahead and crafted all of the items that I just showed you, and I'm wearing the armor and the helm at the moment, and as you can see, it looks freaking awesome. I mean, even this smithy looks amazing. Looks like a knight's helm. The armor itself has about 850 health each for both the armor and the hat, with about a 60% absorption as far as I could tell. Wearing this armor does give you a 10% bonus when fighting against shadow creatures, on top of the 10% bonus you get from fighting with these weapons, so you get about a 20% bonus. You can also get in more damage against these creatures than you otherwise would with a regular weapon like a dark sword. I guess plants fighting plants, you know, gets a bit of a boost. You also get a little bit of a damage reduction boost against these creatures. So if you are going to tank, I would recommend wearing this. But I think, in my opinion, my favorite way of fighting these creatures is with the new Bright Shade Bomb, which does 200 damage. And also means that you can kind of ignore those things. Look at that. Easy peasy. I still have one to spare. And every time you craft it, you get 6 of them. So that's probably my favorite new thing to craft at this point, as far as utility goes. Next is the pickaxe. This has 800 uses and is as good as a pick/axe. So you'll see you'll be able to mine these things. The shovel does just about what you would expect a shovel to do. It digs stuff up. It has 100 uses, I believe. Nothing really to write home about. Also, just very expensive, considering you can make a regal shovel quite easily. Oh no, we've spawned more of these guys. Thankfully, they don't go to trees. It seems they only go towards actual crops, like berries, foods, and things like that. So you don't have to worry too much about them just spawning random things from the wild. And last, but definitely least, is the Bright Shade Staff, which does a grand total of 10 damage. It does have 50 uses, but like, man, it's kind of underwhelming. I don't know if this will have any kind of other use in the future. You can fight things from afar, but you're almost better off fighting with a boomerang. Like, it's kind of lame. I'm assuming that these items will have more utility later on as we progress through these updates. But for now, yeah, pretty shit. Also, as far as the new items is concerned, this is one of the most expensive items. So it really makes me think that it has something in store later on. Going back to the sword, compared to a dark sword, it does have a bit more durability. It has 200 hits instead of 150. But when you consider how expensive it is to craft, like we'll look at the crafting recipe, 3 husks and 4 pure brilliance. Not to mention you would have to fight it after Celestial Champion if you have that setting enabled. It really doesn't stack up. And I think that's kind of the case with most of these crafts. They're not bad, except for the staff, but there's just not much point to making them at the moment, which leads me to believe that we will uncover some kind of utility for them later on. And I said I would show you the new Wilson transmutation. So you can create pure brilliance from 3 infused moon shards, which is kind of nice. So if you really want to farm a lot of brilliance, it honestly wouldn't be the worst thing to just turn on the moonstorm, mine a bunch of moon shards, and exchange it into brilliance. Alternatively, if you want to gather this infused moon shards without being in the moonstorm, you can gather pure brilliance and just turn it into moon shards. You get 2 for each pure brilliance that you craft, as opposed to needing 3 moon shards to create 1 pure brilliance. I think this is probably the way to go, mining this and turning it into brilliance as opposed to the opposite. It depends on what you want and what you need at the time, I guess. This update also introduces a new kind of fighting mechanism where you'll find these new creatures have what's called a planar attack and defense ability. So you'll find that it will often poke through armor or do more damage or less damage than it should. Like I showed you with the dark sword doing very little damage against these creatures, but this sword doing a normal amount of damage. And it's all about this planar absorption and planar reduction, planar fighting ability. So I think we'll see more of that as we go through. I'll show you, I'll put on a different kind of armor and you'll see how it just demolishes the armor. So if we wear even knight armor, you'll see it goes from 100% to 88%, but I still take a lot of damage regardless. So this is armor that should absorb 95%, and yet I still take a fair amount of damage. So that is something to consider as well with this, when venturing into this biome and fighting these creatures. If you can fight with their own items, that's the way to go. And that's about it for this beta. It kind of reminds me a bit of the Nightmare Werepig in the sense that it's really cool, but also just feels like there's something missing. Like the items are not very useful yet, but maybe they will be. Hopefully they will be, because it seems like awful lot of effort to add all this stuff for it to not be very good. I pretty firmly believe that it will be something that will be built upon in subsequent updates, so I think it's a wait and see for me. Very exciting. I like the look of all of the items so far. It looks really cool. I haven't seen any new kind of music yet, so I assume that will come in as well. I'm keen to see what you guys think about it as well. Do you think it's going to be something better in the future? Are you happy with how it is now? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you very much for watching the video. I'll catch you later. Take care.